My name is Jason, and this is Just Watches. Now, when Timex first released the Giorgio Galli S1, I was very interested. The watch had such an interesting design and unique case, plus a Miyota 9000 movement, but at 41mm I thought it was just a touch too big for my personal taste. Enter the 38mm version, the Giorgio Galli S1 38mm. Now, at a size I basically love, I knew I wanted one, but I waited just a touch too long and they all sold out. Fortunately, a friend of the show purchased one and decided he did not want to keep it, so I was able to buy this one from him and bring you this review. So price and availability, well, at the time of this recording, this watch is sold out, but I'm sure Timex will be making more. The MSRP is $450. So starting with the case, it's 38mm in diameter by 46mm lug to lug. It's only 12mm thick, and then it has an 18mm lug width opening. Now, the case of this watch is quite stunning at this price point. Using injection molding, they were able to create these fascinating skeletonized lugs. The outer finish of the lugs are brushed, but that inner skeletonized area is high polish. Looking through the lugs reveals the mid case, which has concentric rings carved into it throughout. Also, if you look closely, you will notice stepped concentric circles on the edge of the case back as well. This watch is replete with small details like this that you notice over time and only adds to the enjoyment of this watch and case. Just above the lugs, the case is high polish, transitioning back into brushing on the bezel. The case is elegant and intricately detailed without being overly busy. Now, the synthetic rubber strap on this watch is really strange and I think the biggest miss overall. It starts at 18mm and it doesn't taper. The hardware is nice, a combination of brushed and polished metal that matches the watch, and the mechanism is very functional. The end of the strap snaps into the strap itself, which keeps it perfectly flush. The strap is also very comfortable on wrist. However, I can't help but feel this sort of strap belongs on a smartwatch. It feels so out of place on this dressy piece. So while the strap is high quality and of unique design, I'm just not a fan of its use here. Fortunately, it does have quick release pins, and at 18mm, finding a different strap is going to be quite easy. The screw-in case back is nicely detailed with the previously mentioned stepped concentric circles around the edge. Information is also deeply engraved here, revealing one of my nitpicks with this watch. It only has 50 meters of water resistance. The case back also has an exhibition window, which reveals a custom skeletonized rotor. I love the use of this custom rotor. Both the color, which adds contrast to the rest of the movement, and the fact that it's skeletonized, which allows more of the movement to be seen and is also cohesive with the other skeletonized parts on this watch. This watch is powered by the Miyota 9039, which is an excellent choice. This is a 28,800 vibration per hour movement, which is going to provide that slightly smoother second hand sweep. It is also a no-date movement, which is great because this is a no-date watch, so you're not going to have a ghost position, which is excellent attention to detail. This movement also hacks, hand winds, and has a 42-hour power reserve and a stated accuracy of -10 to +30 seconds a day. The only downside to these movements is that the rotor only winds in one direction and will free spin in the other direction, which will cause rotor noise. Now, rotor noise varies depending on the watch, but in this particular watch, it is quite loud. The 6.5mm push-pull crown is nicely finished. The use of concentric circles also makes an appearance on the crown, which is a theme we saw on the midcase and case back. Rather than signing the crown, the interior is black. I like this small detail. It adds some visual interest to the crown, and it actually matches the stock strap perfectly. The crown is a bit slim when you wind the watch, but when it's deployed, it's easy to set the time. The double-domed sapphire crystal is just proud of the bezel and has a small facet around the edge. The crystal is treated with anti-reflective coating. With the double dome, there isn't distortion, but the Wristshot has a mirror finish, which does create some interesting visual effects when viewing this watch from an extreme angle. I always like to see a sapphire crystal. It's going to be much more resistant to scratches, and I always appreciate anti-reflective coating. The dial on this watch is fascinating. It is both curved and skeletonized. It also has a strong sunburst effect that can make the dial appear light or dark gray with basically any shade in between. Due to the fact that the dial curves down towards the Wristshot, you also get a play of light at the edge of the dial, which depending on the angle can be light or dark. The hour indexes are applied and faceted. They have a U shape where the top surfaces are brushed and the inner surfaces are high polish. The dashes for the minutes are actually cut into the dial, and below the dial there is a lighter gray disc that catches light from certain angles. The Wristshot is a totally mirrored finish, which will reflect the dial and indexes when viewing the watch at an angle. All of these little details details, from the multi-finished faceted applied indexes to the curve of the dial to the cutaway for the minute dashes, all play with the light in interesting ways. While the overall design is simple, these small details are just waiting to be discovered and makes having and owning this watch just interesting over time. The text on the dial is very minimal, with Timex at 12 and a jewel at the 6. I don't believe this jewel is a functional part of the movement, but it's a playful detail and I really like it here. The only other text flanks the 6 o'clock index, saying Giorgio Galli and S1 automatic. I'm a huge fan of the minimal text and subtle details of the dial. The high polished baton style hands are gabled and will catch light on one side or the other. They are also filmed with extremely weak lume. While this isn't useful in the dark, it does help to make the hands pop against the dial during the day due to the white color of the lume. The minute hand is just the right length, long enough to perfectly cover the cutaways in the dial for the minutes. The second hand is a simple high polished stick, but is also plenty long and sweeps elegantly thanks to the 28.8 thousand vibration per hour movement powering this watch. As I said before, the lume is terrible, and with no reference point, it isn't useful. However, on a dressy style piece like this, I really don't think the watch needs to have lume. On the Timegrapher in the dial up position, we're only losing 2 seconds a day with nice amplitude and 0 beat error. With the crown up, the watch runs a bit slower. With the balance wheel now fighting gravity, we lose some amplitude but retain that 0 beat error. I love the perfectly straight line on the Timegrapher when a watch has no beat error. And here is the watch on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. 38 millimeters in diameter and 46 millimeters lug to lug is such a sweet spot for me, and this watch also wears extremely flush against the wrist. From the side, you can also see the skeletonized sides of the case as well. So pros and cons, starting with the pros. Wow, I love the design of this watch. There are so many cool details, from the skeletonized case and minute dashes to the recurring theme of concentric circles to the curve of the dial. You also have a great movement. They made sure to use a dateless version of the Miyota, so there's no ghost position. And finally, you have a sapphire crystal with AR coating. As for the cons, I do have a few complaints about this watch, starting with only 50 meters of water resistance. With the screw-in caseback, I'm not really sure why we don't have 100 meters of water resistance, which would be nice because you could just be a bit more adventurous with the watch overall. Second, the strap is so strange here. It's really well designed and comfortable, but doesn't match the style of the watch at all and would seem more at home on a Fitbit or a smartwatch. Finally, the rotor noise is quite loud on this one. It doesn't particularly bother me, but it is something I want to point out in case it will bother you. So is this watch worth the money? Well, at $450 MSRP, it isn't cheap, and it's competing with the value kings of this price point, such as Steinhardt. But apparently, the person I bought this from was able to use one of Timex's 30% off codes. After 30% off, this watch is somewhat of a no-brainer. You have a great movement, sapphire crystal, and a really unique and well thought out watch design. Just be prepared to want to switch out the stock strap. I've been pretty critical of Timex in my reviews. I love that they are in the mechanical watch game again, but I think many of their offerings are overpriced. This time, however, I think they really nailed it. In addition, the fact that they made this watch in 38 millimeters only confirms my suspicion that Timex is very tuned in to the more niche side of this hobby. I'm really excited about what they have in store for us next. So there you guys have it, the Giorgio Galli S1 in 38 millimeters. What do you guys think about this watch? Let me know in the comments below. As always, if you're enjoying the content of this channel, I invite you to subscribe, and if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. That's all for this time. My name is Jason, and you have been watching Just Watches.